It's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, yeah, just a little background here for the last caller. We never said that we were against tax cuts. I want to make that clear.
No.
But on the $5,000 that was brought up yesterday, and this is because somebody on X had posted that, look, if you save $2 trillion, why not give 20% of that $5,000 to the, to taxpayers who have paid taxes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now not everybody pays $5,000 in taxes, but if they did, there's 79 million people that paid taxes last year, roughly 79 million taxpayers.
Mm-hmm.
You have 153 million that file. Let's see how many people. That means you've got a ton of people that don't pay anything in taxes. They file, but they don't.
Right.
They don't pay any. But still, if you take that 79 million, and we're rounding off these numbers, and they get $5,000 each, you're talking about roughly $400 billion, which would be 20% of $2 trillion. And it would be paid after July 4th of 2026.
Right.
When they had the $2 trillion in savings. And so Elon Musk said, I'll throw it to the president. Then the president didn't bring up the figure of 5,000. That was brought up in the back and forth between Musk and the person on X.
Mm-hmm.
President then said, 20% back to the people and 20% to pay off the debt, which then I wondered, well, where does the 60% of the rest go?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it should all go for deficit reduction or back to the people, right?
It's got to go somewhere.
If you could get it. But they're not going to find $2 trillion. They may have it on paper, $2 trillion. It's never happening.
No. You're not going to get to that point. No.
And we looked, and this is all in relation to, we were talking about the budget and the framework budget of the Republicans, which at the most optimistic, which would be economic growth, you're talking about maybe a savings of $200 billion a year.
Mm-hmm.
The most optimistic growth that it most likely won't reach.
Right.
And that doesn't include all the rest of the tax cuts that the president wishes to give that he talked about yesterday, which from what I know is not in the Republican bill right now.
Mm-hmm.
And our point was the fact that if you can't balance if you don't have a balanced budget, if what the president gets and he signs it for the budget starting October 1st for the next year, there's no reduction. If it still increases the budget, you lose the political leverage that you have.
Mm-hmm.
That was our point. Now, as to whether as we have said, whether $5,000 would go just to taxpayers, or our other point was, since it's the Republicans even pushing harder for an expanded child tax credit, if you gave $5,000 to all taxpayers, there'd be an outcry, what about us?
Yeah, right.
Which would be the other half of taxpayers that Republicans now have voting for them.
Yeah.
That would want a check cut for them, too.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were just bringing up the challenges. We never said we were against if they were able to cut because that would be cutting the budget roughly in a third. Well, of course, you would want to do both. You'd want to be paying off the debt, and you want to be sending some of that back to the people.
Right.
So we're not against that. The caller said, you guys said we never said that. So I just want to make that clear.
Yeah. No, not the case. Look, all of us fiscal conservatives have the fantasy of finding $2 trillion in wasteful spending that we could cut every year.
Oh,
my gosh. Can you imagine?
Me. Oh, no, we're not against finding it.
Right.
And as I've said, if you could legitimately cut a third of the budget,
Oh, my gosh.
I will be the most thrilled person in the world to say, I was wrong.
Oh, yeah. I'll have a parade where I'll just be in the parade and everybody there on the side will just be screaming, "You were wrong," and I'll be gladly waving.
You can be on the "We Were Wrong" float.
Yes.
In the DOGE parade.
We will be the "We Were Wrong" grand marshals.
Exactly.
And gladly. Yep. You can throw candy at me instead of me throwing candy at you.
And it's simply, again, this isn't hard to explain. Everyone, where are you guys? Well, right now, right now, outside of the interest on the debt, because the interest on the debt now expected to be $1.2 trillion is what it's projected to be, this year, which pushes us over the $7 trillion as we were last year. So roughly the budget's $6 trillion.
Yeah.
All right. Social Security, it's not being cut. Social Security, $1.5 trillion. Medicare and Medicare Part B, a little over another trillion. You have $2.5 trillion. Cutting welfare. You have you look at Medicaid and food stamps. Not that you couldn't do some cuts there, but that in itself, again, another $1.5 trillion, which takes you to $4 trillion right there. Your $2 trillion in cuts gets you there, which means the government funds. You haven't funded defense. You haven't funded anything.
Right.
And that's the challenge. That's why we say they're not going to be able to cut $2 trillion.
Right.
Yeah. Now, part of the problem is, part of the things they say is that you have, they suspect tens of millions of people, which means 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 million people are collecting Social Security fraudulently. We'll see if that's true when it comes up. But they haven't found it yet because, they're suspicious that the fraud's there. Whether it's tens of millions, who knows? They haven't officially put that out there because the DOGE ticker would be a lot more than $55 billion in savings.
Right. Yeah. If you can find accounts that are open but payments weren't going to them, which may be the case in some cases, if you're finding that great of a number of fraudulent payments being made, because you have to prove that they're fraudulent. You see the meme of the one woman who's been receiving payments, Social Security payments, and her son was in the Civil War, and she's still beautiful at the age of 396 years old or whatever, and they've got these memes out there. And I have no doubt fraudulent payments are going out. But to what extent? I have no doubt whatsoever. And this is why we should all insist on this kind of auditing every day.
Yeah,
this auditing should be going on a regular basis.
Well, if you had, because that's the figure they're using, tens of millions they suspect. Okay, so I decided 20 million people collecting, okay, just because they said tens, not 10 million,
right.
But 10.
So let's say 20.
So 20. And they each getting, just taking an average, 20,000 in Social Security a year. That's $400 billion.
Yeah. Yeah.
And by the way, if that fraud is happening, privatize Social Security.
If it's happening at that level,
you need to.
If there are actually that many accounts, that would be, again, if we're talking tens of millions, then stop the whole train.
Yeah.
And I say we stop it before October 1st of this year. That's just me.
No. You grandfather the grandfathers in.
Well, it would be, here's the thing. It would be retroactive when we finally get it privatized in the year 2086. It stops now, but on the road to privatization, you're going to have to pause those payments for everybody. Starting October 1, the beginning of the fiscal year. That's the only reason I'm choosing that date. I don't know why you're so sensitive to it.
Nothing to do. That's when I started collecting.
Oh,
Social
maybe
Security.
that's it. Oh, I see.
That'll be the.
Yeah. It's there's something drastic would need to be done.
You know what? They'll compromise on the no taxes on Social Security.
Yeah.
It'll be, well, only if you don't continue working.
Right. Exactly. Only if it's your primary income or something like that.
Right.
Yeah. No, actually, I could see them doing that.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. If that is your primary source of income.
But then again, do you want to do that? Do you when you know that labor, if you're going to have, think about this, because part of the projection of Congress, of the Republicans in Congress, is we're going to go from what is projected to be 1.8% growth between now and 2034 to 2.8% growth. You're going to need bodies. Should the incentive of government be for me to retire or for me to continue working and paying taxes on my other income?
Ultimately, the incentive is to keep as much revenue coming in as you could. Yeah.
Right.
So taxing you on other income. Ultimately, that would be it. However, you would be you're trying to appeal to people who are in retirement and can't, work or quit working and will tell you they can't find work or physically they're not able to work or things like that any longer. So that is the ultimate appeal.
Just love it. Someone sent to us where the DOGE dividends may get redirected next week inside Fort Knox.
Exactly.
And then there's just like an IOU, Elon Musk. I got here first. There's nothing in there. I got here first. Signed Joe Biden.
Exactly. Yeah. I love it.
Well, if the thought process is we need to back the currency with gold, you better check to see if there's any gold in Fort Knox.
I think you do. I think you have to. The whole idea of live streaming Fort Knox. Let's do it. Go ahead. Put the cameras in. Let's see what's going on there. Yeah. Yeah, it's it's the problem politically is that people are fickle, but they're fickle for a reason on many levels. Again, when the honeymoon period starts to wear off, the poll that came out and said, all right, look, we give Trump and the Trump team, 6 months grace period on getting things rolling in the right direction. Well, we're a month in. That means 5 months left. It goes pretty quickly. And as hard as they've been working, it still goes pretty quickly. And there have to be some things to measure,
No, I think DOGE is one of the greatest domestic efforts ever by a president.
Who's even
ever?
Who's even, because they've all talked about
They've
this.
all talked about nobody's ever done it.
Who put it into action?
Right.
Nobody put it into action.
No.
They will tell you, well, we formed a committee and blah, 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 and a panel and a bipartisan blah, 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 and also some other blah, 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 and we threw in the blah, blah, blah. We mixed 2 eggs with that, and then in the morning we had breakfast. What? And blah, blah, blah. And each of those eggs cost $2 trillion. What? There's been zero effort, real effort. And talk is cheap. Actually, talk is costly because the debt is rising. And the more you talk and don't do anything, the more the debt just keeps going up and up and up and up. $36 trillion. And with the interest on the debt getting more and more every year because the principal is growing, we're going to be at the point at some point of not being able to service the debt on the interest. All of this is imperative. It's critical to the future of our country. If we don't do this now, I suspect we never will. If we don't get something done now,
right,
it won't get done
Yeah.
in my lifetime.
866-90-RED-EYE.
This morning's USDA Farm Report is brought to you by House Products. Tested, trusted, guaranteed since 1920.
A busy start for new Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins, including holiday weekend visits to the National Farm Machinery Show in Louisville, Kentucky, and in Kansas. Prior to that, after her welcoming ceremony at USDA headquarters the day after her swearing into office, a visit to the White House.
Clearly, one of the key issues facing all Americans right now is the price of food and grocery prices.
The secretary, speaking to reporters at the White House Friday, noted specifically rising prices for eggs and discussions with USDA personnel on highly pathogenic avian influenza on poultry operations and how to mitigate impacts for producers and consumers.
We are looking at every possible scenario to ensure that we are doing everything we can in a safe, secure manner, but also to ensure that Americans have the food that they need.
The daily New York shell price, an official USDA egg price data set, recently passed $8 per 1 dozen eggs, the highest on record. I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
This report brought to you by Cenex Fuels and Lubes.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
In Red Radio, he's Eric Harley and I'm Gary McNamara. Really hasn't been much response to Defense Secretary Hegseth saying that, telling the Pentagon that they need to start preparing to cut their budget 8% for the next 5 years.
Right.
That would be a 40% cut from where defense is spending right now. Does that have any chance in hell of ever coming to fruition?
I doubt it. I have my doubts. I saw it yesterday and I thought, all right, this is part of the whole, same mentality. All right, let's see where we can cut. The question would be,
I'm fine with somebody doing this, by the way.
If they can,
I'm fine with somebody saying, okay, where can we cut and where can the cuts be made? Where are we wasting the money? Where are we exactly?
Where and with and there. Look, it's my dad was career military, and there have been jokes since the beginning of the military about the $1,200 hammer and the $100,000 toilets and all of these things. You can find things to trim in the budget. Probably some duplicity in certain roles in the Defense Department. And I think we're probably, with AI, we're probably going to see a number of things consolidate in the future. I don't know that they're at that point yet, as a matter of AI being able to, find greater efficiencies for you or pare down certain roles along the way. I'd love for them to be able to find, again, as much as the fat as they can to trim that out. We'll see where it goes. But this is, I don't know. I was pretty optimistic when I saw it. If Hegseth is going to, if you're going to be a part of this administration, then, and the idea is to trim, look at everything. And I guess we'll see what they find.
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
Trinidad Radio, he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. Thanks for being here. You know, one thing when it comes to the defense, you know, when we talk about defense appropriations, you and I both know, because we've seen the history, that, you know, somebody will get a contract for a certain weapon system, and it takes 15 years to develop. And by the time you get to the 15th year and it's time to start developing it, they realize it's antiquated.
Yeah, right.
And it's not where the military is going, but they still keep producing the product because the congressional delegation from that particular area knows that 10,000 jobs rely on it.
Right.
And so that's one of the challenges that, you know, we've always had. If you've ever been through, I know in my life, when they've done massive base closings, whoa! I mean, it's just it's the people that protest, the special interests. I say the special interests of people that, you know, the communities, whatever, that are involved, you know, in it. The closures, I mean, it has caused, you know, mass devastation, economic harm to particular areas. And so when you look at Hegseth coming in and saying for the Defense Department, look for 8% cut for the next 5 years, it brings me to these questions that I have that I don't have the answers for because I'm not privy. This is where we need to get Jeff Skunk Baxter into the show, not to talk about his time with the Doobie Brothers and Steely Dan, but when I saw him on the Jason Alexander, George Costanza podcast a couple of weeks ago, and they were talking to him about how powerful is Russia. And people don't know it, but if you ever seen Jeff Skunk Baxter, you would know who he is because of his big mustache.
His mustache is more famous than he is.
Yeah, you're right. It's just off a side road for a moment. I was telling you earlier in the show, just on YouTube, you know, just because I put it on random shuffle and everything comes up. You know? Saw an interview with him again the other day, and also with Alice Cooper. They should sit those two people. They should sit him and Jeff Skunk Baxter down together and just say, tell us all your stories, and all the video goes into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Right. Yeah.
Those guys knew everybody. Yeah. They played with everybody.
Right.
They hung around with everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody who died before we got to 1975, they knew.
Yep.
And it's just, when I was watching him and then Alice Cooper doing an interview and just going back and talking about, you know, hanging with Hendrix and, you know, we say Jimmy this and then Jeff Skunk Baxter, you know, selling the guitar or whatever, trading the guitar or something.
It was a trade. He worked at a guitar shop, and Jimi Hendrix came in, and they had set up this left-handed Fender Strat, which became probably Hendrix's most famous guitar, for somebody else, and the guy didn't show. And so he said to Hendrix, you know, hey, I have this. And so he traded him for something Hendrix had, and it was a bad trade. He tells Rick Beato they actually docked him 3 weeks' pay. The owners of the music store did. But he would be directly responsible, maybe indirectly, I guess, responsible for Jimmy getting that particular Strat. Yeah.
And so I was watching the one on Skunk Baxter, and I thought it would be music.
Yeah.
And Jason Alexander looks at him and says, how powerful is Russia and Putin?
Yeah.
And in his explanation, I don't even want to attempt to paraphrase, his analysis was not that strong. You know, that's not the threat. You know, in the situations. And now people that may not know it, Jeff Skunk Baxter, who was an original member of Steely Dan, and then played with the Doobie Brothers, and then has done sessions with everyone. Oh, some of the greatest stuff ever when he talks about work ethic. Because these kids come in, and it's like, do I get 2-3 months vacation? That guy's a workaholic.
Yeah.
He really,
has been for a long time.
And
In fact, at one time, he was with Steely Dan and the Doobie Brothers at the same time. He was on the road with the Doobie Brothers in England. They had toured together, and that's where it kind of came in. Doobie Brothers started incorporating him more. And then he was on the road with the Doobie Brothers in the UK, and they called him, and Steely Dan, basically, the members of Steely Dan called him and said, hey, it's over. We're not going to really do anything anymore. And then right then and there, the Doobie Brothers said, well, sorry to hear that bad news. You're officially a Doobie Brother.
Yeah. He knew it was coming, though, Steely Dan. He said he knew it was coming.
Yeah.
But he is one of the most world-renowned consultants on weapon systems. He has top security clearance in the Pentagon. And he told the story about doing something with Ringo Starr. And he goes, by the way, Ringo's just great. It's like these people, you think, God, they're a Beatle. It's like, it's just a... He said he's the kind of guy that let's get the job done, let's get the work done.
Yeah.
And Skunk Baxter was talking about just the work ethic, and he said something that I've said before, and I went, wow. And I know I never heard him say it, but it's always been my philosophy. Outside of my family, faith, whatever, nothing has impacted my life more than work in a positive way.
Right.
Even the things I never wanted to do, even the labor kind of work.
Right.
Everything, every type of work I ever did was one of the best things I ever did. It beats vacations. It beats anything. And I'm not talking about just working in radio. When I worked at the steel plant, machinist, whatever, bill collector, all of it. Invaluable in my life. Lessons that nothing else could teach me. Only work could do so. And being in that competitive environment, nothing else could really match that. He was saying basically the exact same thing. But, yeah, he's a defense consultant. We brought him up when they were like, Elon Musk using somebody in the private sector. What are you talking about? They got a Doobie Brother who consults the Pentagon and has been doing it for what, like 40 years almost?
Yeah. Yeah, it's
like
been a long
the 80s.
time. Yeah.
Oh, but he said he was there doing it with Ringo, and Ringo went, what, we're going to be sitting here and, the men in black are going to come and, escort you away. He said, we're 20 minutes into the session. My phone rings. 5 minutes later, there's two huge guys in suits saying, you got to go.
Yeah. You need to come with us, sir.
You need to come with us.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah.
and if you've ever seen Skunk Baxter with the mustache and everything else, he is the last person you would ever think this is one of the United States best weapons systems analysts.
Yeah.
You go, no, that's a guy in the Doobie Brothers.
Yeah.
It's like,
Right. Exactly.
but when I start thinking, I'd love to pick his brain, because one of the things couple of things they talk about when it comes to weapon systems, and this is the one that worries me, when they say, because there's a train of thought from many military minds that our Navy is a waste of money, that the aircraft carriers can be taken out with the hypersonic missiles so quickly that we're wasting our money on aircraft carriers. Now, I hear that a lot. And by the way, how much does that add to the military budget? I don't know if that's true or not.
Right. Yeah.
But you think about it and you say, all right, what are the top minds thinking? And none of us know. None of us know what weapon systems we actually have. That's totally top secret. It's tough for us to get an analysis of what to cut in the Defense Department when we don't know what they're doing.
Right.
Now, Hegseth does, but you will sit there and look at it and, okay, is artificial intelligence, is all of this, do we need? Remember, even in the last Top Gun, when Tom Cruise was told, you're one of the last of the dying breed, we're not going to need pilots anymore. Are we getting near that point?
Well, it's interesting because when we talk about introducing AI into the equation and creating efficiencies, but also creating ways to weaponize technology, because the enemy is doing that.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
I have a family member who is just now leaving military cyber intel. He's, in fact, going to work for one of the airline companies because of his expertise. And, I would love to sit down and pick his brain and say, okay, once I think he's been processed out completely now, but once that is done, all right, your take. Is that the future? Are those the concerns? I mean, I wouldn't be trying to get intel out of him. Just, is that the concern? What do you think? The same with Hegseth. The same with all the top minds in that community. If you think about the way that Trump went after Iran in one way, aside from the killing of Soleimani, one of the things we did is we used a cyber attack. We went after their systems. Then you look at Space Force. All right, is there anything there that can be used in Space Force that, in terms of leveraging things on a much bigger picture, being able to either gather intel, which I suspect that's already being done, or implement any kind of, again, you think of all the technology that's been in play, what's working right now and what's not. Ultimately, in wartime, we do know that at certain points, to win a war, if we go to war, Trump's not a war president, but in order to make sure that we demonstrate our strength, peace through strength, then you have to have the manpower. You have to have the available boots on the ground. You're going to have to go door to door. You're going to have to, that's how it's done. But also incorporating the new technology and the type of technology, in fact, used in the killing of Soleimani. This is very precise technology. So you combine all of that and you find, all right, what's working and what isn't. How much of this is stuff that's put into motion? You mentioned the closing of bases. Growing up as an Air Force brat, I wasn't aware of that so much because Dad retired, got out of the Air Force in 81. But as you got further and further, you understand, because Mom and Dad still live right across the street from an Air Force base. And anytime there's talks about closings, right, consolidation or anything else, military towns start sweating. It's a big part of their economy. Yep. It's a big part of their culture. It just has been for a long, long time. It always is. And that becomes a problem. But you also have to look at creating those efficiencies to have a stronger military as a whole. It's not just about saving. It's about consolidating and taking what budget you do have and making sure it's concentrated and spent on the things that are working in order to demonstrate that strength to the enemy and our allies.
Because when you come in and say, we're going to cut 40% off the defense budget in the next
5 years
and be better, you've got to have a plan to lay out before the members of Congress.
Right.
I just wonder what is in that plan.
Right.
And
exactly.
I'm not taking sides on it because
because
I don't know.
I don't know.
None of us know.
Yeah,
We don't know what weapon systems we have. Like I said, I know part of the arguments that are being had.
Yeah.
But when they say, when I hear the argument, where aircraft carriers are a waste of money because they can be taken out so easily, what do you replace them with?
Right.
Then what do we foresee? How do we project power if we have to? What? And I don't know because I don't know. It's probably the biggest top secrets out there. The biggest security clearance is what we're going to have in 20 years or what we're going to have in 10 years or the potential of what we can do right now that nobody knows except those with, very high security clearance.
Right.
And if you don't know that, it's tough to look at the defense and say, okay, well, then we need to cut it and it's worth it because you don't know.
We don't.
866-90-RED-EYE.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Friday Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. Oh, wow. All right. Wow, what a day.
It doesn't stop.
Every day is like...
It does not stop. It's going to be a long 4 years.
Eric said to me, every day when we walk out the door, it's just like, well, we're not going to start another show. It's just the continuation. We're going to rest.
Yeah,
it's like a break.
It seems like after 5 hours, you know, we come in and we're just like resetting for the day, and then we stop at 5 and it's like, okay, let's do a show. Oh, we just did a show. Oh, we'll do another. It just never ends. That's a good thing, by the way. I love it.
Yes.
Love it.
It's no longer separate shows. It's just a continuation from the day before. That's the mentality. It just never stops, the information coming in.
And if you wait just a few minutes, the Friday show will begin. So we'll talk to you then.
Yep.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.